Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Okay. Getting closer to good settings. That is a win. Alrighty, guys. Let me think. What could we do in terms of layout? I might do a little bit on the layout. So we want the chat, we want the window like we have now. Let's implement the chat, and maybe we can implement the chart of Bitcoin. Maybe we can do something. Let's see. Yo, by the way, let's listen to Dr. Mike's new video about AI and the future, the robotic age that is upon us.
Dr. Mike here, video number 71 for the channel. And the video topic today
And we're gonna comment on it during.
an interesting idea that I want to
and we're gonna work and walk
the world to get
all
us
at
all
the same
thinking
time.
about what we could do about the incoming robotics age, specifically with how that melds with mass unemployment and universal basic income. And I have a little proposal here that isn't designed to be taken exactly at face value on specifics, but it's designed to get folks thinking.
Wait, I was setting up the bass before. Let me just test the bass sound real quick. How low can we go? Okay.
About what the trade-offs look like with the amazing stuff that's happening with the robotics revolution and what kind of ways we can think about to minimize the downsides. So my big proposal here is to impose something like a 10% income tax on the income generated from robots in the future, and take all of that money, give it zero of that money to the government in any capacity to spend as they see fit, nothing to regulatory agencies, nothing to politicians. They already have plenty of money from traditional income taxation, which would continue. But this money would go into a giant pool that monthly would be redistributed to every single American, a UBI. But where, other than the amount of, well, no, I take that back. The government could use its already money to run that system. So 100% of the collected taxes from every single robot worker in the workforce, 10% of their income is taken out, put into a giant bank account. That bank account puts the money into everyone else's bank account every month, and then everyone gets 10% of what all robots make in the United States, as far as generating enough money for what would eventually become a universal basic income. I think this is an interesting way to do things, and I'm curious about what your thoughts are about it. So let me describe
It's never gonna happen.
Get you up to speed on.
It's never gonna happen. You know why? Because people are greedy.
So
because there is one guy, he wants more than the other guy. And then there is the other guy, he thinks he deserves more than the other guy. And then there's always gonna be that one guy, and then
advancing at
it's never gonna work.
Speeds. To be snarky, because I'm feeling a little bit snarky today, if you want to clown yourself big time, bet against AI and talk about the AI winter or AI slowdown. It's a real good way to every few months look like you just were not paying attention. It's advancing at incredible speeds, and the conservative estimates now of artificial general intelligence are somewhere in the early 2030s, very conservative. And many people are saying it's going to be in the mid to late 2020s, like very soon. AGI is not a term I'm 1,000% in love with.
I want to lock the
And I'm going to
aspect
have a video for you
ratio.
guys eventually, almost certainly,
How would I do
about the
that?
sort of misnomer that AGI is. AGI is artificial general intelligence. The ostensible definition of AGI is a robot or computer platform that has human level reasoning, perception, understanding, and output. So you tell it something, it understands like a human would, it reasons like a human would, and its output is like anything you could dependably expect from a human, which means if it has a robot body and the robot body is sufficiently dexterous and energy dense and all that other stuff, that it can kind of start to do pretty much every human job. Like you hire a robot and you go, hey, like here's how to sweep the floor. It goes, okay, like a human would, and it would try and say, okay, a little better, a little
Here
more
it
that
is.
way. Okay, great.
Amazing.
Okay, great. Now sweep the rest of this facility. See you tomorrow.
That's what I was looking
Just like
for yesterday as well.
That's kind of what AGI
Oh,
allows
here we
us
go,
to do.
dude.
I'll
Wait, it's
talk
not.
about how AGI is a little bit of a wacky idea, and that when we get to AGI, we'll have, as soon as we get to that last check mark that makes a robot as good as people are at almost everything or everything, we're already at artificial superintelligence. It's a very, very easy way to get that traction on that problem. But the idea that robots can do an increasing number,
So it doesn't
and then
work?
most and then almost all human jobs is the real kernel we want to dig out from there. And that's 100% true. It is essentially inevitable.
It is inevitable.
We have to prepare for it. Now,
we have to join them, dude.
Massive upsides. The increasing power of AI is going to multiply our production of value in our economy, of good stuff, goods and services that are awesome and help us, by kind of as much computing as we can run. The number one most constrained resource that we have is intellectual capacity. Humans to do things, to make decisions, to organize data, to take things and transform them from one form to another. The creation of value. If
I have to do it like
loads
this.
of artificial intelligence that can do that, well, we can just build more data centers and build more robot bodies, and all of a sudden we just have more workers that are ultra productive. It's going to allow us to answer questions and solve problems that we couldn't even hope to solve a decade ago and didn't even know to ask. There are going to be incredible advances in medicine, in tech, environmental approaches, you name it. It's a massive renaissance that's incoming, and it's already here, and it's just billowing up. And when AGI hits, and AGI and above, artificial superintelligence, it's just going to be a completely crazy, super different world that's amazing.
That's going to be good.
But there is at least one potential downside. I say potential because it might not work this way, but we got to be ready for if it goes a little south. When you have something on a cloud or in a robot body that can do tons of human jobs, and it's priced at,
we could have little screens down
in the cloud
here
near zero, and in robot bodies eventually substantially less than a human is priced at for that same labor, what happens to human jobs? The good news is that there will be plenty of work for organic humans in almost every envisionable scenario. There's professional economists who will remind us of something. We have this big circle called all current jobs. And a lot of people will say, okay, so robots are going to come in, and they form a little tiny circle at first of some jobs only robots can do. And then that circle grows and grows and grows as robots gain ability, and eventually it's the whole circle and all humans are unemployed. That's not how that works. The reality is that circle of all human jobs that are currently done sits inside of a almost infinitely sized mega circle. And that mega circle is all of the jobs that could be done to make people better off. I am speaking to you guys right now. And under the table, there is nobody giving me a blowjob. Why not? I want one right now. Scott, what you up to?
Fine.
Scott, get in. But here's the problem. Scott has to run the camera and check the audio feed.
Yeah.
Lol.
Max the editor boy.
Max the editor boy is a boy. And while boys are cute, that's not my jam. In any case, there are about 1 trillion different things you could want and do want, but you ain't nobody doing them in the current economy. We're talking about being a service person to help you get ready for work in the morning, somebody to iron your clothes, all the household tasks. We're not exploring the moon. We're not exploring Mars. We're not studying the undersea oceans. We're not studying people's data streams to try to learn their personalities to make the AI work better with personalities. There's nobody doing that stuff because we just don't have enough people. So if robots take all human jobs, humans can move into jobs that no one's doing, robot or human, and that's been the case in all of recorded history. It used to be almost all humans did farming. But now almost all farming is done by industrial machines. Are all humans out of work? No. Humans just moved into other jobs. So there are so many jobs only organic humans can do for the time being, and for the foreseeable future, even through robotics, we might not have to worry about it. Fitness. Robots can train you. They can't intuitively understand how it feels to be trained, and so they've never gone through it themselves. So you can have a robot personal trainer in the future for sure, but like at some point you kind of want to loop in a human probably, because a human's going to be able to tell you like, yeah, the real world don't do that. Like I know the robots run the whole internet, but there's something missing from your own perception. There's another one of,
let me
people
think.
who,
How do we do this?
are working on childcare. Robots will be involved in childcare, but probably not like
I can
the
have like my
only thing
soldiers
watching the
down
kid as a
here.
robot at first. Sometimes people need human connection. They want to talk to humans. Psychotherapy. Robots can
We can
administer
have
excellent
chat.
psychotherapy. ChatGPT already does a great job. But there's something about talking to a human that's actually experienced things that's qualitatively different. Fashion influencing. If you want to be an influencer who tries on different makeups and different fashions, you have to be a human because you're selling to other humans. And in almost every other way of advertising products for mass consumption, even if you have a corporation run entirely by robots, but they make clothes for humans, they're going to need humans to come in and try the clothes on and tell other people about them. That's a lot of jobs that only humans can do, because if your consumer is a human and you need someone to say, hey, this works for me as a human, and I've tested it as a human, I've vetted as a human, I'm improving it as a human tester all the time, and I'm telling you about what's new and cool as a human. Here's another one, taste testing. If you have entire fields of machines designing new recipes and farming them out to the public to also robots that make them for you at home, that's awesome, and it's inevitable. But at some point, you need a human in the loop, because you probably don't want to push a recipe out to customers without having tried it on human testers first. And I don't mean like they're going to poison you. They're going to know what's poisoning you and not, really, really simply. But they're going to want to feed the robot food to some humans first. And humans go, this is really good, a little too much salt, and I think you got it. Shit like that. And then those robots are going to be cooking influencers, and they're going to go out in the world and say, hey guys, all these recipes are awesome. I tried them. They're amazing. Only humans can do that job because the target market is human. And until robots have full sim humans, at which point we can all just live in the cloud and all these problems don't matter, we're going to have humans do lots of work. And so most of the jobs are just going to push humans into doing probably just better jobs. So that's definitely the thing. And there's going to be lots of organic work. However, there could be times and places, because humans take a little while to retrain and to start doing new jobs, and machines incrementally
I like
are taking
this
less
one.
and
I
less
like
time
this
to
one.
train at all,
This
and
looks
can
cool.
do new work just super rapidly, that the influx of robots into commerce and into industry could be amazing and will, but it'll be so fast that you'll have temporary times of humans just finding a lot of transitional time between employment. And that's going to be a thing. So let's talk about potentially addressing that problem. And before we address that problem of human unemployment and what to do and how to get those people taken care of so they can go on to their next career that they find passion in, that's, human career, let's talk about what the robotics industry is likely to look like once it
This
goes
animated
commercial
one
and it
is
really begins
nice.
to scale. If we get universally capable humanoid robots, and soon we will, they're already in testing, Figure 02, and then we've got, I think the version 3 of Elon's robot is doing all kinds of cool stuff.
Check out Boston Robotics, guys.
Pessimistically, by the early 2030s, robot workforce
They have
is gonna be
insane shit
multiplying
going
all
on
the
for the
time.
new year.
Probably
Holy
sooner than
shit.
that. The economics of this get wacky really quick. And I think I've mentioned this a little bit in other videos, but it is an insanely important thing that people can really benefit from realizing. Because once you really inculcate what this means, it's like a giant oh shit moment. Let's have it together. Here's how the economics get really wacky. If the average robot costs $1,000 a month to combination build and maintain, like you lease a car for $1,000 a month that covers the cost of making the car and the cost of running the car and all that stuff. So if the average robot costs $1,000 to build and maintain at some point, and at some point it will, and then even less, and the average robot is employed somewhere in the economy and generates $2,000 worth of value per month. Okay, so it costs $1,000, generates $2,000. We think about a robot generating $2,000, the robot's only generating $24,000 of revenue per year. Like, that's a very, very low-skilled worker in the United States. So I'm setting this example especially very, very gently. We'll use a more realistic early to mid 2030s example later, kind of where this is going, but where it starts to scale is the robot, it costs 1,000 and it makes 2,000. So every robot that is built roughly can generate a net profit, net revenue of $12,000 per year for its builder. Dope. But since robots will be employed kind of increasingly everywhere, it's very likely that major robotics companies won't just keep all of that money for themselves, but they're probably going to profit share with private individuals and other companies and the robots. Because companies that make robots like Tesla, they're probably not interested, and it's not in their bandwidth and way not the best return on their investment to make it so the robots are the only ones getting paid and only reporting to Tesla. They don't even know what the fuck the robots are supposed to be doing out in the world. They're just going to be artificially generally intelligent and ready to go and ready to be taught whatever they need to. But the specific skills that you teach them, like you hire robots at a shipyard, they don't know how to do ship work. You got to teach them that shit. And if you're going to teach them that stuff, Tesla better not take all that money. And Tesla understands that. Just like not all of the money goes to the YouTube corporation when we put up ad revenue and stuff, a bunch of it goes to creators. In a very similar way, it's likely that robotics companies in the future will profit share with private individuals and other companies. So just as an example, just for thought experiment, they might take in, let's say the robot gains them 12,000 of net money per year. Tesla might take 6,000 of that to themselves. Amazing. Huge 50% profit margin. That's pretty dope. And then leave 50% for whoever it is that purchased the robot and is employing it. So that way your robot nets you 60 or 6K every year that you use it. Raw 6K, all expenses covered, by the way. And that Tesla or whatever robot company runs the robotics side uses that 50% to make repairs and updates to the robots and make them better and better and better over time. And obviously some of that money just goes back to the investors and makes everyone rich. And the rest of the 50%, like I just said, goes to whoever pays the monthly fee. And hey, that's how the robot economy works. It works very similarly with cell phones or YouTube channels or anything like that. Like the Apple Corporation actually just sells the cell phones to like AT&T or whatever, and or just sells them directly to you for a certain sum amount of money. And then you pay AT&T or whatever company you have for a contract. It's $100 a month, $50 a month for all the data streaming.
This is good,
and then,
actually, but
however you use your cell phone to make you money,
I wanna,
like in every way that
change the color of this.
Like Apple's not coming for that money. AT&T doesn't give a shit. They got their shit, and they just want to empower you to go make money and go have fun with your cell phone, and they don't really care what happens. That is highly likely to happen with robotics companies because it's the easiest, most nonsense model to scale robotics out. Like, we don't care what you do with a robot. Don't do anything unethical. It actually won't do anything unethical because it's super intelligent, so it knows what ethics are. But go do what you do, give us some money back, and then you can have the rest of the money. That is explosive and inevitable, essentially. What this does, and an amazing thing it does, is it creates an incredible
what is with the gradient
all over the world to lease and deploy robots to their wants and needs, and everyone wins, like cell phones or YouTube. Because a lot of people won't even really work anymore. Their job will just be managing a fleet of robots. And if robots are artificially generally intelligent, you can actually put a robot manager in charge of that fleet instead. And then all you do is approve major decisions and collect the money. 100%. It's kind of what factory owners do now, right? And as soon as these robots are ROI positive for the individuals using them and for the corporations that build them and maintain them, they will begin to exponentially enter the workforce. Why? Because they are net productive. They are free money generators. If a robot, here's the thing, the robot doesn't need the money. Robots are perfectly, quote unquote, happy to continue to do their job. Also, the intelligence they have never dies. It's just from the cloud to the robot brain, and every night when it sleeps, it uploads back to the cloud. The robot doesn't even care if it has to sacrifice its body for the job. And it can be programmed to have an absolutely great time doing exactly whatever the hell you want it to do. Ultimate flexibility. For that reason, the robot just gets a bunch of money and goes, I don't need this for anything. Here's some for the company. Here's some for you. That ability to get work done, the robot is now this work node. It's this node in a complex dynamic game theoretic system that just simply produces value. And we're going to be eating off that. That's just the beginning, because robots will almost inevitably begin to produce more and more output per unit time and cost less and less to make an upgrade. This has been the case for pretty much every single invention that has matured in the third industrial, the electronics revolution. And it is highly likely, because robots will be a fourth industrial revolution product, to get even more extreme. The AI revolution that's currently in its infancy is the fourth industrial. That's where robots are going to really bloom. And so, like, think about how, TVs have done, computers have done, cell phones have done, cars
the internet has done.
These are things that just continue price performance wise relative to people's incomes to get cheaper over time, but just better in every conceivable way. You compare a Tesla car today to something made in 1979, like a GM, whatever the hell, in 1979, you're going to be like, is this just like a pollution machine that also makes noise for fun? I don't get it. And it takes you places, but it's loud. It's not very safe. And the Tesla ratio to current incomes is just cheaper than the cars were back then. And cars actually have tons of regulatory burden. Hopefully that doesn't enter robotics as much, but things like TV, cell phones, multiples in price performance. And we have every reason to believe on theory and in practice and on the economics of it that the same thing will happen to robots. So at some point in the not too distant future, maybe 10 years away, maybe less, maybe
it looks so bad.
You might have 5 robots per every human, all kinds. And these robots might cost
I need like one robot for sex, one that makes me food, one that scratch my balls,
monthly value
one that
$10,000 per month.
Cleans up after me, right?
Okay, let's step back.
And one that does everything else. 5 robots. Perfect.
Today, ChatGPT 4.0
maybe another one for like one left.
Many intellectual tasks, orders of magnitude better.
Left ball, one right ball, maybe one for my ass. I don't know.
Booking trips. Can already do these things better than any human being ever at a scale unimaginable to us. And in a lot of different intellectual ways, it's coming up real close to the average person or even above. Think about that intellect multiplied by 10 inside of a robot. How many people today in the United States and much of the world can earn over $120,000 a year from their jobs, which is to say they produce at least that much because their work pays them back that much? A ton. Like all doctors, pretty much all lawyers, almost all engineers, they're all making over $120K a month. Is it really so difficult to believe that a robotic system that's 10 times more intelligent than all of those people are today, even that one that is 1.2 times more intelligent than those people, can't make the same amount of value? So my contention is a robot eventually in the 2030s is going to be able to produce more than $10,000 per month in value. I just don't think that's really difficult to envision. Like if I said $1 million per month, you'd be like, oh, that's crazy. Like the RP Corporation produces more than that per month, and like, we don't have anyone at the company that's 10 times smarter than the average human. So already that's kind of believable, but fuck that nonsense. Just $10,000 a month. What I'm trying to say is that's very reasonable. Now, that means that each robot might net something like $100,000 per year. And to
actually like
more
this
and more
dude.
After that as it gets better.
Yo, hold on. I think we got something.
Maybe the average person has a few robots.
This doesn't even look too bad, huh?
Damn. How is this going to affect?
We can work with this.
A lot of people's current jobs. So if you can hire a robot to do the same job a human used to do, but at a way smaller cost, $500 a month, holy crap. But as a huge benefit to you, you're likely going to do it. For sure. Now, because the number of hypothetical jobs, as I described earlier, is always larger than the size of the human workforce, as we pour more robots in, robots will begin to do lots and lots of jobs that humans never did, but also lots and lots of jobs that humans do. And for some people, that's going to lead to unemployment transitions, and they'll be a reality, perhaps for very many people, possibly for very few. It would be the first time that mass unemployment ever occurred, because in all of the 3 industrial revolutions we've had so far, including taking the American workforce from 98% of farming to 2% of farming. And there was never mass unemployment during that time. It would be the first time there was mass unemployment. It's believable because technology used to come in very slowly. Every several decades, there would be major innovations, then every several years. Now, if you guys follow AI news, it's every several weeks. And so in the future, it's going to be even more intense and more insane. So the innovation is going to be completely crazy, which means money will be fucking falling out of the sky. The real thing I'm talking to you about today is how do we collect that money in a way that makes sure that some of the people, maybe many of the people who could experience a transitional phase where they don't have jobs, robot took my derb, how do we make sure
Took my gerb.
that is smoothed over? Because it's a big deal. We don't want people unemployed. That's fucked up, right? We have all this money. We got to do something with it. So what can we do about managing this unemployment transition? There are many ideas that we could do, and I'm going to tell you a few of them, which I think are categorically fucking terrible.
Hey, I think this looks good,
but people
dude.
talk
What the
about
fuck?
them openly.
Everybody knows
and
it's
frankly,
Facebook, right?
Recently,
We got
had,
Anime
like,
Grill,
longshoremen
we got my
people,
name.
Dock worker
Yeah, that's how we're
people
gonna do this.
protest, and one of their proposals was a total ban on automation, which is them just trying to rob you and me of our hard-earned money because they're doing a racket at the fucking ports. There's no other way to put that. We can make it, here's some options. We can make it illegal for robots to be constructed and sold. That misses out on potentially multiplying our total wealth as a society by 10 over the next 20 years. By 10. There will be no more poor people left. The average person will be a millionaire. Stop. This is not, can you guys imagine when people were using computers for data analysis and people who used to use it by hand would have been like, in 1975, no more computers are to be built. No, you're not allowed to use computers at work. Well,
Imagine.
what would be today? You wouldn't be
We
watching
would
this,
be in
you?
the fucking
Your
Stone
cell phone's a
Age, dude.
computer. So is your TV. Like a non-starter. Non-starters, we just throw that one away. Another thing we can do is make robots have to charge wages that are higher than humans so that humans can still
Insane.
undercut robots and still be employed.
Imagine.
That would radically reduce innovation.
Okay, let's go.
keep
We need
goods and services
Instagram.
way higher. How do you think you're going to get super cheap goods and services in a robot economy? Because the robots work
And
for fucking pennies and produce a shitload of
and
value.
X.
You get to be the benefactor of that. If we're not allowed to hire a robot unless we pay the robot, way more money, and thus we hire humans for less.
But we need
we
a
just got
grill
bunch
for
of
them as
expensive
well.
robots. They don't really help us all that much. Yeah, sure, for some of the expensive
I think I
jobs
saw
they're
on
good, but like
Instagram.
it's really hampering how
here.
much we feel it and how much products and services
So we
cost
need this,
to
and then
us
we need a
regular
grill
humans.
for
So
this.
again, another total non-starter.
Should we just take her?
Anyone promulgating this very charitably, I mean this in all
How will we
respect,
do this?
is economically underinformed at best, illiterate at worst. We can also make it so that robots are off limits to doing certain human jobs to protect those
Wow, who
human
is
jobs.
this?
Now, like, there's some liability stuff in which that might make sense, like babysitting. Maybe you want to be like, look, you have to have a
She's
human around
perfect,
the
dude.
baby because,
She's got the colors. Look at this.
OpenAI says that. OpenAI with their
Oh my
finger
God.
robot integration, let's say
And
in
what
the
a beauty.
2030s, like you can have a robot that absolutely can tend to a human child better than most humans can. But OpenAI says they will not allow your robot to tend to your children under the age of 2 by themselves, straight up for legal liability reasons. Because like if the child has like SIDS or whatever, sudden infant death syndrome or whatever, and your kid just croaks, shit, fellas, all over respect, shit just happens. Like sometimes like a 2-year-old will turn over weird and like it's really tragic shit, but like babies die sometimes. And like if OpenAI's robot is tending to the baby and the baby dies for no fault of the robot tried to do everything it could to save it couldn't do it, then like OpenAI is getting sued for like an infinity amount of money. And they might just say like we're not caring for extremely elderly people and we're not caring for children. You got teens, we'll babysit the teens. Up to age 70, we'll do caretaking duties for humans. But in hospital settings where people are near death, we have to have human supervision around. The robot can be around to help, but you got to have a human. That is a different case. That's totally understandable. But I'm talking about like no robots are allowed to do carpentry because we want to protect human carpentry jobs. The one thing I'll say is if you go back to video number 59 in our series, this wildly misunderstands the purpose of work. The purpose of a carpenter is to deliver finished wood products to humans that need them. It is not to have a carpentry job. It's very random that you would even make things out of wood. There's plenty of other shit to make things from. So the real reason you have a job is because humans want what you have. And if they can get it somewhere else, you're not entitled to a job at all. It's like your girlfriend wants to break up with you and you're like, I'm sorry, I'm entitled to having a girlfriend. It's like, what? No, you're not. Your girlfriend isn't entitled to having you as a boyfriend either. But because she wants you in her life, that's why you in her life. As soon as she's like, I'm good, pimp, I'm going with someone else, it is your 100% moral responsibility to be like, all right, what else I got? So the whole saving jobs for humans thing is total nonsense because you don't have a job to have a job. No. You have a job because people demand and need your goods and services and you're kind enough to produce them. But as soon as they go, I'm actually going something else, I might have a robot do this for me, you're not entitled to shit. Legit. And all the longshoremen people, that is exactly what's happening there as well.
Why is this so good, guys?
And we
What
could
the
take this
fuck?
argument really absurdly. We say, okay, we want human carpenters, right? Why don't we bring back human chimney sweeps? Get a 4-year-old going up and down that chimney. It's a job. We don't want to steal chimneys, sweep jobs from people at having a fucking roto-rooter robot do it, or a guy stick a fucking long pipe up there. No, a human needs to go in there. And that's insane. There's tons of jobs that humans could just be doing better jobs that we don't need them to do anymore.
Yes. Okay, now
And
we need
of course, this kind of limitation
X-grill.
would reduce total wealth like crazy. Because like right now, I've tried to get a welder to come to my gym to do some welding for me to modify some equipment custom. And welders cost like $100 an hour. And they just straight up, as far as I can tell, don't exist. Because I've tried to book a few and they're like, yeah, I'll see you. And they just don't show up. Why?
What is the X logo?
So much work that they're buried in the shit. They could just do only as much work as they want. They make infinite amounts of money doing it. And they just don't give a fuck. And they just don't show up. And listen, this is not a slight against welders. You guys are the fucking awesome pimps that you critical to the economy. But if we got some robots to help with welding, then some of us who need welding would get access to welders and not have to wait in an infinite line that actually never resolves itself. It's like this in almost every single industry. If we need the help, robots can help. And if you say only humans can do it, well, you better get to breeding real fast because I need more welders, goddammit. I need them now. It'll reduce total wealth like crazy. It's a real bad idea. It's backwards with respect to modern economics, and it's just preventing us from living all.
These don't look like eggs, dude.
So there's another option, of course, which is to establish a
Should we just go with the old logo?
Off of just.
I know, but we already have
people,
blue.
Some of whom will use robots, some won't. And that if people lose work, they can work on their own terms without having to worry about finances for a while. That's dope. My proposal is a direct UBI leveraged specifically to robotics. Because if I'm a human person and I work with my hands, I don't really interact with robots. And now I have to pay money for other humans that lost their job because of robots.
I don't know. Like,
I love being a part of a society where we get to help each other. But also it's like a little lame for that person to ask me to pay for
I have to hold my arm with my other arm.
Lost the job.
To scratch.
Whose fault was it? Sort of. Fault is a real weird term to use here. Well,
what
it's
the
robots,
fuck?
right?
This is not a logo, dude.
And because the robot took your job, maybe we can work that in somewhere. Remember, we have this really interesting thing here. Robots are going to take some jobs, right? But the amount of wealth they're going to produce is fantastical. So here's my proposal. Just a proposal. I could be very wrong about this.
You know how many people are fucked if AI goes like exponential in replacing their job? So many. But it's gonna take a little while longer because people are gonna be against it. Whole generations are gonna be against it. It's gonna be the like in South Park. The exact thing they predicted it, 100%, dude. And it's gonna be a fight, man. But eventually, inevitably, people are gonna get replaced. And then it's no longer about being replaced, but having to adapt and actually getting something from that. And that something is gonna be huge, dude. The amount of quality of life increase you can gain. Imagine the possibilities. If everybody, I mean, in the first place, if people would work the fuck together, right, instead of trying to fuck themselves each other over. Imagine people would all pull on one fucking string. You know what we need? Like one alien invasion. Who said that, dude? He was so right. I think it was Joe Rogan. We need like one big invasion where people understand we are not the enemy. There's other stuff that we have to fight against, you know, like we have to unite against. And I swear to God, dude, this is the only way, like. Other than that, I don't see a good future for nobody, dude. It's just gonna be a fucking fight forever. But eventually, man, the blood is gonna dry out. And then we'll see. It's not gonna be in my lifetime. I know that for sure.
impose something like a 10% tax on all revenue coming from robotics platforms. If a robot is
Let's see what he
operating,
says here.
45% of the income goes to Tesla, as an example. 45% of the income goes to the person running the robot and collecting the money for whatever job they have it doing, flipping burgers or mowing lawns or whatever.
And 10% goes?
of that robot's produce goes to the government. So if a robot makes
So you need a good government
$100K
then.
a year in residual value, then the government gets 10K of that per robot. Remember, there's going to be a world with lots and lots of robots. And if there are lots of robots, well, then it's
never gonna
really
work.
a problem that people are being displaced, because not a lot of people get displaced by 100 or 1,000 robots. But if it's millions of robots, yeah, we're starting to displace some serious people from the economy, but also we're starting to make some serious money. And you take money from that tax every year and distribute it evenly into every citizen's bespoke bank account for that style of transaction. So then we have a universal basic income.
I can't find the Twitter logo. What the fuck?
Folks don't need to worry about the government misallocating it, because that money is not for general taxation. It is not for the government to take and dispense as it sees fit. It is exclusively to put into a big pool. The pool divides evenly by the population of the United States, and all of America's people get the same amount of money. Totally just system, zero fraying of any kind. So, in other words, a direct to people money with no overhead. As soon as you introduce filters and give some more money to some people, you get economically differentially interested classes. If you demonstrate, well, robots took my job, so I need more of this money, all of a sudden you're getting like weird welfare, and then you're not really encouraged to go look for work and all that other stuff. So it's much better to just spread it all around. I could be wrong about that. There could be other nuanced ways of doing it. So what are the downsides of doing this? Some people, as they do now with their own money, might spend the money poorly and still need social support like housing and food.
Silver, that's kind of meh.
In fact, doesn't change from now till later. Some people will just use that robot money to live off of and do nothing else but chill.
Look, this is the official logo, the right one.
That already, and I'll have more to say.
I got it from Google.
It's a serious downside, serious problem.
I just Googled it.
The biggest probably downside of this is that 10% tax will discourage companies making robots a little bit from investing in robots, because you don't get as much return out of it. But I suspect the robotics boom will be so insane that 10% is actually not going to be a huge measurable disincentive.
Yeah.
It's absolutely going to incentivize keeping more tasks on the cloud, because taxing AI on the cloud is possible. It's
I need this bright white.
But it's probably good to have a lot of stuff on the cloud and at even no tax rate whatsoever, because remember, cloud computing can't take most humans' jobs, because the human has the mouth and the voice and the hands, and that's how they do their job. Cloud computing is already doing most of the work in the digital space, and humans doing less and less, but doesn't really like put people out of work necessarily. Like customer service folks might be put out of work with cloud computing, because you just need a phone and all that stuff. But really, this issue is a robotics specific issue, because robots with their hands and their faces and their ability to move around, they can potentially get after almost all human jobs. Whereas data center cloud computing, there's a bunch of jobs that like you need someone to flip the burger, and the data center can't do that. So maybe they'll invest more data centers, a little bit less in robotics, but still the upside is so enormous. There's a reason it's 10%, because I could have said 90% tax on robots. Well, that would have curbed investment like crazy. 50% would have hurt it a ton. 30% would have hurt it a ton. But 10% is a very small number. So I'm totally amenable to discussing 25%, totally amenable to discussing 3%. But I think somewhere in that range passes the vibe check of still massively incentivizes the economies of scale that would have robot companies investing into this, massively incentivizes people still buying a robot, because it's like, hey, you can buy a robot, it could do work for you, but the government keeps almost all the money. You're like, what the fuck do I need that for? Fuck that. I think there's a world in which that low tax rate is really, really good, but innovation could be higher and faster if we had no tax at all. We could make it much higher, but then the long-term revenue of the robots would be curtailed. But we really want the long-term revenue of these robots to grow as much as possible. Why? Because if that revenue grows, we get upsides. What are the upsides? The more robots outcompete humans in jobs, the more robots are hired. The more robots are hired, the higher everyone's UBI becomes from that pool, because more robots are producing more work and contributing more to that pool. More 10% is just more money. And remember, that's not 10% of a fixed robot workforce that gets antagonistic. It's a workforce that multiplies all the time. Like, we don't have the same number of cars in the US.
You know what? If it
today
actually
as we had in
stays at
1950.
percent,
It's like whatever,
10%,
triple or
which is
something
not
like
gonna
that.
work,
Maybe way more than that.
it will be actually good because
it's
it's
just
a
gonna be
lot
more.
of money. That's
So more
so
money.
much value for the government.
This
But
is
they're
the real
probably gonna
magic to
cap
think
it,
about.
right?
As robots start approaching
Like,
10x
one
in
robot
human
cannot do, like-
productivity, which
Let's see
is
what it
not
says.
difficult to think about
Let's see.
in something that's 10x more powerful and more intelligent. And if
Absolutely
we're
not, dude.
having
10x is
robots
nothing.
approaching 10x human population numbers, everyone already has
Where would you
at
put
least
them,
one
though?
cell phone, often more than one cell phone. If we can get robotics, which is very possible, to the level of cell phone proliferation, the thing is you don't really need more than one or a few cell phones. If you're a drug dealer, you need like 3. One cell phone does everything you need. But with robots, like, one robot is doing kitchen chores. I could have another robot tending to the grounds or whatever mansion you fucking live in. Or you can have a robot that you bought that's going to do a job for you and it brings back all the money for you. But like, if you can afford another robot, why not just buy another one to do still more work? There's always more work to be done. And cell phones aren't independent workers, so they can't just go out in the economy, do their own thing, but robots are. So there's this massive incentive, not only to make the robots individually way more powerful in how much value
Yeah, I
they
need
produce,
this white to be
every
white.
incentive, everyone's aligned. The government wants that to happen because they get more tax money. The corporations want that to happen because they get more profit. And you want it to happen because the robot's doing way more stuff for you. It's just everyone's totally aligned on that. And you want as many of these robots as possible, because if you have a robot that's 10x more capable than a human, and there's 10x
we don't have
more
this.
of them than humans, we're talking on a 10% tax of hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to every American citizen, just
have
on
it
that
here.
10% tax rate. I'm going to say this with full disclosure of me really meaning what I say. It is the end of material poverty as we know it. If somewhere in the late 2030s, the average person makes $400,000 per year simply to exist, because just on 10% of robot revenue, that's how much robots are producing, every income inequality argument, just completely, like, if I'm making $400,000 per year doing nothing, so is every other American.
Imagine you can just copy
I
paste
just
it, dude.
can't
That
get
would be
really
amazing.
irate about what Elon Musk is making.
Okay, so
I
this
don't
is
give
the
a shit,
thing we need.
because we're all rich. It's a totally different world. And this is a real possible world that is, I assess, coming sooner than later. So let's consider the basic economics and do the right thing from the get-go. I'm totally fine with zero robot tax whatsoever, by the way. And just, if you have robots you own, you declare your income tax for the robots, and then the income tax, a part of that goes to the UBI. The only reason I think that's kind of is because income tax just goes generally to government, and I hate that because they're just going to spend all of it and say we have no money for the UBI. We want robots as much as possible in the workforce, and for humans to be as well off as possible and insured from bad times. So it's a real good idea to get this minimum tax potentially for robots and keep that incentive to get the robots as capable as possible and as many of them as possible. Full bloom. Now, some people who have money to buy robots and employ them will use that, and they'll have even more than the UBI's level of money. But if you think about it, as soon as you have enough money coming in to cover your living expenses and your entertainment, you can, and when the robot just gets better at its job, even if you just have one robot and now it's getting extra money, at some point the robot's own extra money can afford to buy another robot for you. And then you instantly 2x your revenue stream.
There
so
we
if
go.
there's really a world, work with me here, in which you can make an excess profit of
You get an enemy grill
$100,000 a
with
year,
black hair.
but each robot costs $1,000 a month, or let's say $10,000 a year to run, what's stopping you from
If she had a
taking,
face, she would be perfect.
I don't
Maybe
know,
we can give her a
easy
face.
$50,000 of that 100K
Hmm.
in buying
I'd like her in the
yourself
style like these.
5 more robots? And now in the next cycle, as long as the fucking robot factories also run by robots can produce robots fast enough, at some point you get to this place where every more money you make just affords you more robots that also make you more money. The limit of that equation is all human wants and needs are satisfied. And we get real close at some point. And on that way up, and I think Elon Musk said this in an earlier
And
interview,
she's actually cool.
when we have a 100+ trillion, 200, 500+ trillion economy globally, ideas about poverty and wealth and what money means anymore start to just be like, it's not about how much money you have. It's like what products, goods, and services are even out there to buy. Because if you think about it, if you're a trillionaire, but you live in like a Southeast Asian fishing village in 1880, it doesn't matter. There ain't nothing for you to buy.
You're trillionaire, exactly.
Get all the people in the village to do your work or whatever for you. But if you're like, I need Swedish meatballs, we don't have that. We don't have. There's nowhere to get them from. Sorry, the global economy doesn't work like that.
Oh my God, I want Swedish meatballs.
It really is a matter of like, well, what can I actually buy? And since the robots are making most of the stuff and making most of the money, guys,
damn, she's good too.
And one quick thing before
like
you think
the
I'm running
pose
off into AI singularity mega world again, and I'm just insane and hyper optimistic. If you describe to someone from 100 years ago or 200 years ago what your life is like today, they'll
jet black hair, dude.
Insane. Think about people.
This one as well, but she's too cute.
Personal trainers who also post social media content. Like, explain to someone in the 1850s what you do. Look, well, I help people exercise. They're like, what's exercise? Like, right. It's this thing we're kind of probably more or less invent at the turn of the century when there's enough rich people. And
this one doesn't fit with the other.
Not
she's going to get mobbed.
But with their minds, that they need more physical movement because that's good for health. And then people help them move. Like, okay, so just ultra rich people shit. Like, yeah. But nowadays everyone trains. It's not just ultra rich people. And so what I do is I help people exercise, but also go on social media to promote my services. And even that makes me money. And they're like, what's social media? And you're like, oh God, how do I even put this to you? And then after you're done describing it, they're like, okay, so you live in a magical paradise world.
Man, if she was the style of these,
to this thing called a grocery store supermarket,
that would be amazing.
Anything you want from the world, and it's safe, and you can eat it. And within,
but she's like an ex here. Maybe we take her.
Yeah, matter of fact, a lot of us are feasting every night, which is why my job is so important, because all of us are getting too fat. And they're like, you're an idiot. There's no
guys from left to right. Which one would you take? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Ripping basic survival off the fucking soil. You're telling me,
oh shit,
just really 50 years and definitely 150. All of our poorest people are going to be fat. Like, someone's gonna be like, you're nuts. Same shit about this, but it's coming and it is inevitable. Last thing, what about the handouts laziness factor? Because you're going to say, look, people are getting money for not doing any work.
How nice would that be?
Two things to say about that. Thing one is very politically incorrect. Here we go. Time to get canceled. There is robust research. It is not, to my mind, completely convincing, but very interesting, that shows that when people get lazy from handouts, it's actually a statistical effect. People don't actually get lazy from handouts. When you give 50 people handouts, the ones that were lazy to begin with and only worked begrudgingly and poorly, I might add, or weren't working
That's
at all.
Cool. Wow.
As a character trait.
That's so cool.
They get the money and they don't do shit with it because they weren't going to do with it anyway. They don't work anymore. They just take the money, eat food, have entertainment, whatever they want. The other people in there that on pretty much pure genetics or some combination of genetics and culture, they're the ones that actually were working hard and scrimping and saving and building for the future. And now when you give them free money, they just take that free money and like, they just do the same thing with all of it that they've always been doing, which is investing and saving and still working because they just need to work. Some people just need to work. A lot of people just work. That's what they do. And if you tell them you don't have to work anymore, they go to work anyway.
Yeah, go anyway.
It seems to be that there are deep cultural traits and potentially very deep genetic traits that within any given population have a normally distributed curve of some people just going to work anyway, no matter what you give them. Some people just don't want to work much and they just won't work under any circumstances unless their survival depends on it. And they just hate it anyway. Once you give people money, it's not clear that the people who used to be hardworking just abandon work altogether. Some of them might work less. Some of them might work in different jobs. But most of the people that are productive anyway, and most of the people that are barely productive at all, we're just kind of not really going to be productive to begin with because of who they are. It's super fucked, but the research supports at least some of this. Do I think that it's the whole story? No. Do I think that over even acute terms that you can incentivize people to be lazier than not by simply giving them stuff? Yes. But I don't think it's 100% of the equation. I think it might be more like 50-50 and even more skewed than that, which is to say that I think a lot of what makes people go to work is just because they're the kind of people that work. And if whether you give them stuff or not makes a difference, not a huge difference. And I think a lot of people who just don't like working all that much, they'll work if they have to. But as soon as they don't, they're going to quit anyway. There's nothing to do about it. So I don't think the UBI is going to make everyone a slob. I think that's highly unlikely. I think ultra-industrious people just continue to be ultra-industrious. And non-industrious people will usually just do really poorly unless you give them money and help them out. Teach a person to fish. I love all that. So this is part 2 now. That was part 1. So I don't think it's as big of a problem. I don't think it's going to disincentivize everyone for work. In a certain sense, it's also like, who cares? Because the robots do all the work now. But that's not true. They're not going to do all the work. There's still money to be made doing human stuff. Number 2, we really need to consider social and psychological factors to find that allow people to have gainful employment that's meaningful to them.
What is this?
Because there's also a large
This
pool
is
of
so
data
good.
that shows that when people are gainfully, meaningfully employed at making a difference, it makes them happier and secure psychologically and makes their life complete in a way that no amount of leisure or entertainment could ever do. And that's probably a thing. It might not be a thing for everyone.
Okay.
Some people are totally fine just hanging out. But
Which one do we
many,
choose,
most
guys?
people are not. And so we do have to think about how we can make sure to have people have a UBI, universal basic income, that makes sure that they're never wanting for the basics. But at the same time, at least allow them the opportunities or give them the proper incentives to
I think I like
continue to do
this
productive
one.
work. Not because we need them to. Robots got us covered. We all have all the money we need, but because humans are better off doing productive
This one is
work.
amazing,
That
but
is a
if she
whole
was in
lot
the
of reason
style
that
like
can be for
these,
another video. I
guys,
think it's a big deal and we should think about all of this. But we're going to be able to afford UBI very soon because the AI boom and the robotics boom is going to take the UBI, universal basic income, from today relatively unaffordable, it would bankrupt the economy, into like, oh yeah, we can easily afford this, no problem. The biggest part is this. We have to manage this transition to a robotics economy in a way that keeps the growth coming and not in a protecting way to limit the robot economy and to get the big UBI and to limit technological expansion and just grab our little resources and stay. Because the Soviet Union tried that, China tried that, North Korea tried that, East Germany tried that. It does not work very well. We want a mega innovative economy where the profit incentive is massive, but we can siphon a little bit off of that to make sure people are at least not having a terrible time getting displaced from employment and not finding any more meaning in their lives. Speaking of meaning in lives, I use Sam Harris's Waking Up app to take a step back from the world every now and again in my regular meditation practice and to try to think more clearly about things. It's very difficult to do in your actual brain. My brain's a complete psychotic, insane place where random, insane thoughts bubble up constantly. And my mindfulness practice allows me to see this bubbling, crazy ocean and to watch it long enough.
Do we want her
getting
on the left
super
or
personally
right side,
affected
guys?
by
What do
it
you think?
until the water's calm and I can make sense
Probably
of
like
things.
this, huh?
You might want to try a meditation practice in your life. If you've been thinking about it, then the Waking Up app is a really good thing to try. We are sponsored by them now. Yay, a sponsor. And the link is in the description to click through. I think I get some money at some point, or Scott the Video Guy really gets all the fucking money. It's son of a bitch. And Mr. Sam Harris gets some money, but you get a huge amount off on the app. If you want to give it a try, that's super dope. Give that some thought. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about this stuff and future videos related to this. I can always try to make a video about the meaning of work in people's lives and why it's good to have a productive outlet and not just entertain yourself all the time. Get all that covered. Let me know what videos you guys want to see, and we'll be back next time for more videos. Peace, homies.
Man, Mike is such a great guy. Where was it? What did I just watch, dude? Where am I? Let's find something else to listen to. Oh, what about Joe Rogan, actually? I haven't listened to one of his things in a while. Also, I haven't watched a movie. The longest thing that I was like watching like where I was focusing on watching is like half an hour, and movies, if they are like 2 hours, I'm not even bothering, dude. It's like, why would you have such a long movie, dude? And back then, when I was no-lifing and just playing video games all day, every day, we would listen to like 3 Joe Rogans a day, like 9 hours. God damn. It's unfathomable. I cannot imagine. Who has the time, man? If I was sharing playing video games or watching something with my loved ones and friends, then that's another thing. Then making time for that is something special. But yeah, on my own, forget it. I could not be like would not feel good. Also, I just couldn't, like. He's got some interesting guests, but honestly, like, I don't know. Ryan Graves is a former Lieutenant US Navy and FA-18F pilot who was the first active duty pilot to publicly disclose regular sightings of unidentified aerial phenomenon. Okay.
For a number of reasons. It's hard, but it's very solvable, right?
This is the latest in the world of Ryan. Other than the fact that you're about to have a child, which congratulations on that.
Thank
but
you.
What you wanted to talk to me.
Let's
about
listen in and see.
And I've become very concerned. I don't understand what's going on. I think there's a bunch of different narratives. Some of them are very scary. The scariest one that I've heard is that the drones are looking for gamma radiation because there's a missing nuke.
Yeah, let's address that first.
Please.
So there has been a lot going on. I made a next post about this yesterday to try to assuage some fears. So
I saw it, but I purposely didn't read it because I wanted to get it from you.
Yeah. So, you know, I've had the privilege of interacting with a lot of government organizations over the past few years as I've been digging down this rabbit hole. Law enforcement at a federal level, DOD, executive branch, legislative branch, and some of the folks that I've come in contact with, they specifically work on weapons of mass destruction. Right, so that's their job. So if there's a loose nuke in the United States, among other agencies, they would be some of the people that would be sitting in a skiff for 24 hours a day trying to figure out where it is and go get it.
Right? Did we create some insane
that would be their number one priority? Right? So
social or what?
Them, you know, what's the sense here? You know, people are kind of starting to panic a little bit, and this message is getting out there.
Where did I put her?
And they assured me that's not the case, that there is not a loose nuke or other type of weapon of mass destruction that these objects, whatever they are pursuing right now. Otherwise, they would be working in a skiff nonstop to make that go away, that problem go away. So, you know, that's part of why I have a high confidence level that this is not a response to a massive imminent, you know, weapons of mass destruction.
This looks so good, dude.
Eastern Seaboard. So I just want to try to dispel that rumor right now. I've seen a lot of talk of that online, and I don't, you know, although this is a, you know, I think a dangerous and scary situation that's going on right now, at least from that particular angle. That's not the indications I'm receiving.
So we're gonna want to chat here.
How would they persuaded you?
My cam here, but for the size, I'm not sure yet.
Any information that leads to this conclusion? Like,
they would be the people actively working it, essentially, right? So,
and they're not.
Where could I put trading view?
So the government is holding back that secret from the direct resources within the government that are responsible for finding these systems, or they're not working the issue because there's an issue there to work.
So the thing
Let me think. Maybe we put trading view.
Nuke from Ukraine. And if that was the case, what could they do? Is there any truth to this idea that we have the type of drone capability that we could send these things out and they would search for gamma radiation and they'd be able to find a nuke? Is that
so? There are teams that respond to those types of potential emergencies, typically within the Department of Energy. Having, you know, potentially hundreds of drones flying around trying to identify these isn't necessarily the best way. Gamma radiation is typically well shielded in weapons. And at very high altitudes or even moderate altitudes, like we're seeing these objects, it would be pretty difficult to detect them. And the way that NIST, the DOE, typically operates in this environment is ground-based teams searching for radiation itself. So it's not necessarily consistent with how they would do it to begin with. And then based off of that other information, that's what leads me to believe that's not the case.
Well, that makes me feel better because I was freaking out this weekend.
I think a lot of people were.
Yeah, I got a couple. But it's one of those things, especially in this day and age with social media. There's so many narratives that get spread and retweeted. And I know a guy who's an insider, and he says to get out of the East Coast and head for Nevada, or there's a lot of that shit going on.
Yeah.
What if you have like
There's a lot of
trading view
different
window and then the chat
versions
next
of
to it?
drones, and this is what's weird.
Chat here,
If they
trading
weren't
view
ours,
here.
If they're not ours, you would think that they could just track them and find out, well, where are they landing, who's got them, how are they being used? Is it RFI, like radio frequency? Is it some sort of a different technology that's allowing them to pilot these things? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
They'd be able to tune into that and figure it out, right? So how come no one's been arrested? How come no one's been caught? How come they haven't, tracked these things down to the source?
Yeah, so there's a lot of good questions there. Let me back up by starting with the fact that this started about 2 years ago, at least. So
But not like this.
a little bit like this.
Really?
So,
In this volume?
not in this volume. That's the differentiator right there. But
Mhm.
so Langley Air Force Base, you might be familiar with the fact that they had drone incursions of an unknown type, unknown origin last year.
Right.
That happened during about a 2.5, 3 week period right before Christmas. Right where we are now.
Mhm.
That also happened the year before over Langley. Unknown objects operating over the base. They couldn't tell where they're going. They were unprepared for them.
I wonder how would I like
before
this.
Christmas. This is year 3, right? And they were expecting them to come again for third year in a row over Langley. And there was, some effort put forward to be able to better understand these when they came back. And they did come back, but they came back in a much wider swath, right? Now we have them all over New Jersey, all the way up to Massachusetts. And it's hard to tell exactly with the quality of the reporting right now because it seems to be, the bigger the story gets, the more people are just looking up and seeing anything and pointing it out. But, there are reports from Texas to Florida to California, Ohio, Minnesota, Pennsylvania. I mean, it's not just New Jersey itself, it seems. And even the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was shut down for a drone incursion just this last Friday, a couple days ago. So this isn't just a one-off event. It is in the sense that it's so large and so many people are paying attention to it. But this has been occurring for at least 3 years around military bases. And that's nothing to say with the incidents that we were seeing over the Eastern Seaboard and other training ranges that fighter pilots were seeing as they were doing their operation. So I'm a little hesitant to link it to the full story that we've been having here, this full conversation, but at least for 3 years, this has been occurring. So, kind of getting back to your question, why can't we do more about it? It's a hard problem, I think, for a number of reasons. It's hard, but it's very solvable, right? I think this can be solved. We can solve it. But right now, kind of the word on the street is that these objects appear to be coming from over the ocean. There's senior congressmen, there's Coast Guard personnel, there's law enforcement that are seeing a large number of these come from somewhere over the ocean. I don't know if that means necessarily they're popping out of the water physically or if they're coming from some unknown location in the water and then proceeding over the coast. I don't know how that relates to Ohio. That's a pretty long trip if they are coming over the ocean. And from the videos I've seen and the conversation I've had, they are detecting these objects through kind of normal mechanisms like radar systems, optical camera systems. They are flying very low. In some cases, they seem to be operating as a group in the vicinity of each other, flying past each other, flying very up close to each other, and then proceeding to do whatever they are that they're doing. It's an unknown right now if they are emitting energy or not. So, like radio communications or their own maybe active sensor systems. It's unknown. I've poked on that front, and the best I can tell, the government doesn't know either.
That seems so weird that they don't know that. Like, it's just very disturbing that someone could operate these things and have, how many, what is the estimated number of them?
That's a great question. I mean, at this point, I'm comfortable making a guess of probably over 800 or 1,000. And how many of those are sightings of the same object? How many of those are individual objects? How many of those are unique objects that?
Right.
So it's tough to say, but this isn't just a few objects that people are seeing. And so I can imagine some technologies that will allow traditional UAVs or drones to operate without emitting, right? So they could be, they could have a self-contained navigational system, right? Maybe they have their own onboard maps and they're using cameras to map where they are.
So then they would be completely autonomous. You just send them out there and they would have a task and they would go through whatever their task is and navigate via their GPS or whatever tracking system they're using.
Exactly. And then, what is their task, right?
Right.
Is it just to instill panic and fear? Is it because they're sensing something? And if they are sensing something, they would have to be using what's called passive sensors, right? So
Okay.
like a camera system is passive.
So we
but
do
you're
have a
shooting
chat box now.
a radar out and having it bounce off of something that's active, right? And that's easier to detect than a passive system. So I could imagine, a fully self-contained autonomous drone system that is doing something potentially with passive sensors that allows it to operate without emissions, which is going to make it harder to track.
If they're doing it at night, if they do have
Can we
passive
have a
systems,
chat
like some
box
sort of an
and
autonomous system,
space
wouldn't that be
for the
underneath low light
charts?
conditions, or do we have stuff that is able to detect whatever they're looking for at night?
Yeah, depends what they're
That's the
looking for.
question.
But ultimately, there is tech. There's electro-optical systems. There's infrared camera systems, not unlike the jets or the systems that we had on my jet. But we were able to detect these objects with infrared when we were flying off the eastern seaboard. There are a number of reports from law enforcement that their infrared systems are not able to pick these objects up. Not just this year, but also the incidents over Langley last year. The pilots that responded to that incident, I've spoken to them, they weren't able to lock these up with their infrared systems either. So they do seem to be exhibiting some type of signature management.
That's interesting. So is the signature management so is it a heat signature that they're giving off? So maybe there's some sort of a cooling mechanism inside of these things? Like how, if they have a propulsion system, so you would imagine it's some sort of an electric engine, right? Because a lot of them are very quiet. That's got to be giving off some kind of heat, right?
Yeah, and that goes to some like very base physics, right? Like we create heat whenever we have, stored energy and we utilize it. So to be able to mitigate that to such a degree that you can't even detect them at all, it's pretty tough. I mean, I can imagine you can
This look
reduce your
good.
signature. We do it in fighter jets, right? Through kind of just like
Nah.
baffles where we cover the engine essentially to make it harder to see. But to have zero ability to detect or lock onto these objects is not a technology I'm familiar with.
Or we put the
Other
chat
than
box
that, are they
down.
exhibiting any type of
Okay, hold on.
movement that's extraordinary?
Let me
or
save
their
this
ability
for
to
now.
turn angles? Is there anything about
Wait,
them
let me
that
think.
points to this being superior technology?
It's tough to say based on what I've seen just in the public from reports and kind of amateur photographers and witnesses. Some of them do seem to be making pretty sharp turns. I wouldn't call them like physics breaking turns, but they don't seem to be operating like a normal aircraft, right? So they're down low. They're making what appear to be pretty high G turns, maybe like 3, 4, 5 G turns at relatively low air speeds, which is indicative of them having a pretty significant power supply, right? Anytime you turn like that, you're burning energy essentially. So for them to be able to make these high G maneuvers and then remain in the area for another 5 or 6 or 7 hours and still have
They have the
battery
chart
life
like
for
down
motors
here.
propelling them, to then go over the ocean to a point where they're untrackable. Again, I'm not really familiar with that type of capability either.
I know they've shot at least one of them down, or people have shot. Have you seen the video? It looks like cops are shooting them down with shotguns in New Jersey.
I did see one video like that. I wasn't sure of how real it was.
I don't know
hope
if it's
a
really.
cop.
It seems. I know because it's like hey,
We
man,
have the
if you
charts
shoot out,
here.
those bullets land somewhere.
And then the
they can
chat
land on people.
here.
Yeah, I've heard multiple people, represented officials saying like, "Hey, government needs to step in and start being more clear because
Yeah, I think I like this.
That's where people get hurt."
Well, there's also been downed ones, right?
I've heard rumors of down ones, but I
There's
haven't.
video footage, and there's people driving in their car, and the cop cars are surrounding this thing.
That was a plane.
It was a plane.
I think that was a plane crash.
Oh,
Yeah, I think if that's the one you're referring to, there happened to be a small plane
can you
crash.
find that one, Jamie?
Okay, let me save this first.
But again, this is the problem with social media, especially with someone like me who's just kind of scrolling for 5 minutes and go, "What the fuck?" And then my kids ask me something, I got to get out of the house. All right, let me put my phone down. So I haven't done any kind of a deep dive, and I did that purposely just to try to pick your brain. Is this one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a plane.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah,
Maybe-
when they were driving by, they're like, "Look, it's a drone shot down."
Right,
But
that might be the one that I saw. I did watch a video. Did you see the video of the plane that crashed in Texas?
I don't know.
Pretty crazy. I'll send you that. It's
We-
unrelated. But
We
the
need to
video
get
crashed in
Elon
one.
Musk to have like a special UAP task force within the community notes.
Elon is, look, he's oddly sly about this stuff. He, outwardly dismisses UFOs. He said, "Well, if they're there, they're very subtle." That's just. I'm
One
like,
might
okay.
expect that, but okay.
But I just feel like with his contracts with NASA and being involved in SpaceX, he can't talk crazy.
Yeah.
He talks crazy so much about other stuff, but when it's in this, fucking multi-billion-dollar company that he runs, I don't think he can fuck around.
Yeah.
I don't think he can. If it was something that he had no interest in at all, in terms of like financial interest and business interest, I'm sure he would be commenting on it. But he's not commenting on it at all, which makes me go, and I don't think he's gonna tell me. I don't think I can call him up because I got a big mouth. I think he knows. I'll be out here talking about it. A guy I know.
Can't tell Joe.
Yeah, it's the thing that disturbs me is not just that this is happening. There's so many drones, and all these people are seeing them. It's happening for so long, and nothing has been done. There's no, they're not scrambling jets to try to meet these things and follow them and track them. They're not shooting them down. They're not. It's just we appear so vulnerable because of this.
Mhm.
Because if these are ours, or if these are people just fucking around, and it's not a threat, okay, great. But why is it so prevalent? Like, why are there so many of them, and why have there been nothing that these people that are trying to investigate this have been able to do that's effective to put a stop to this?
So there's there's some laws in this country that are a little bit antiquated when it comes to dealing with situations like this. So my understanding is right now these things
my
are
God, I got
operating
picture in
mostly what's
picture in
called Class
picture.
G airspace, which is really low. It's away from airports. Not all, of course, right? They're over bases. So
They're over LaGuardia.
yeah, yeah.
Should look
But
pretty good though.
here's I think where a lot of the trouble is coming in from.
Look at this
I think the
perfection,
government
guys.
has to make a
Oh my
presumption at this
God.
point, based off the feedback from
Oh
the
my
DoD and
God.
others, that if this is not a foreign adversary, then we have to make the assumption that it's a U.S. citizen that's operating these. Because of that, they essentially need a warrant in order to wiretap these.
What?
Yeah,
Even with the Patriot Act?
that's the feedback I'm receiving. That's the legal limitation.
Come on. They don't even need a warrant. Get into my phone. Get the fuck out of here. I don't buy that.
Well, whether it's the reality situation or not, that's how they're proceeding, right? And so
Oh.
to overcome that, there's like a 120-page report that needs to be filed all the way up to the Deputy Attorney General of the United States in order to even intercept these signals that they may or may not even be emitting, to be able to determine where they're going. And so I think that's one part of what's like slowing down this whole investigation.
Hmm.
On the other hand, for base commanders, they have limited authorities to protect their base, but when they do, they need to submit basically a request all the way
All
to the Secretary of
right.
Defense. All right, so now you have this like super politically charged situation with a lot of risk of objects flying over the U.S. If they take action and shoot one of these down, even with the Secretary of Defense's permission, they're on the hook if that thing takes out a school bus or otherwise damages someone's
Or
property.
kill somebody.
Yeah.
Jamie, can you just do a quick search? Have there been drones that have been shot down?
I haven't seen anything. There's a story from what today is this? 2 days ago. New Jersey lawmakers were having a press conference asking if the government could shoot one down so they can.
My hand is so unsteady while I'm walking.
Down if they're asking to shoot one down.
Okay,
that
should be
type of
good.
thing, I hear
Right.
something new that I don't know if it's even worth bringing up, but this is a new story.
I
going
want
on. It might be
a
what some of this has to do with. I don't even know if this is.
Missing radio
thing around this maybe.
Yes.
Material.
Scroll up a little bit higher so I can see who put that up there.
There's a few people that posted it.
Okay. Yes, I did see that. While looking at Nuclear Regulatory Commission alerts, one confirmed there's radioactive material that has gone missing on December 2nd, 2024 out of New Jersey.
I guess it was being shipped there and it didn't make it. A container arrived damaged and empty.
Well, my understanding is these sightings started around November 18th.
Yeah, so I saw November 20th too, so I don't know if that
We can
makes
also
sense.
put like current
So we
workout
can explain to
schedule.
people that didn't listen to our first podcast why you're uniquely qualified to talk about this stuff. Could you just please tell people your background so they understand what you used to do and how you got involved in this whole UAP thing in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. So, formerly trained aerospace engineer in college, joined the Navy immediately after with the hopes to go fly fighter jets for the Navy. Was successful in doing that, and I flew the F-18 Super Hornet for 11 years and 2 deployments, primarily operating off of Virginia Beach. And pretty standard career until about 2013 or so, when we came back from our deployment. We began to upgrade our radar systems. When that happened, we put in essentially a much more powerful radar.
Can I have like the
into jet.
workout
It took about
schedule
8 months.
here?
So you'd have, you might fly with a newer radar in the morning, maybe an older radar at night. And consistently, when we were flying with these newer radars, we were picking up a bunch of objects that were operating in our working area that we weren't seeing with the older radar.
Alright, let's test out
They
the
were
chat
performing in
box.
strange ways. They would be stationary. They would be around 250 to 350 knots, kind of meandering around the area. Not really working together per se, but kind of clearly operating in the same vicinity as one another, right? So we weren't flying in formation.
Well, we do want the
We'd even see these supersonic as well, 1.1, 1.0.
full name.
Typically heading east, and we'd only see them over the water. We originally thought they were radar errors, right? Some kind of software glitch. But eventually we started
Apparently-
to correlate these across other sensors, such as our IR FLIR system.
Does the
our
YouTube
missile
thing
system would
work?
Lock onto these,
Tests.
and we'd try to fly up to them to see them physically with our eyeballs. And when we do that, we wouldn't see anything. We'd come within about 500 feet of these objects. All our sensors are pumped into our helmet, augmented reality style, and
Oh,
it would
YouTube
tell us
works.
exactly where to look, and boom, we come right past
And
this
kick.
object, and there'd be nothing there. We'd circle back around and then pick it back up on our sensors. It would be slightly displaced, but that was kind of the status quo for a few weeks until we had a near miss with one of these objects right at the entrance to our working areas. Pilot came back, canceled the flight, had a look of shock on his face, and described it as a
Okay.
dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere. And once that happened, we kind of had to come together as a squadron with a safety officer in our squadron and say, hey, like, hey, what's going on? This has kind of been rumor and conjecture, but, we almost had a near miss here, almost lost an aircraft. Let's gather as much information as we can. As it turned out, there are 4 other near misses that had occurred in the past month that pilots were too uncomfortable to even report.
Ooh. Boxed?
And that really kind of kicked off the seriousness of this issue for us.
Yeah,
And
like
we
boxed.
started filing paperwork, safety reports, and hoping and expecting that this would get resolved in some way as, the proper people, whoever that was, got these reports and they could mitigate it in some way. But that never happened, at least from our perspective. So we essentially treated them as safety issues. We would avoid them. We wouldn't fly close to them. And then in 2015, we left to go do what's called a pre-deployment workup cycle aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt. So we train like we play. You get the whole air wing there, 30 jets, 40 jets. And we do all our
Yes, I
complex
like
missions.
this.
And there were a lot of objects down there as well. They either followed us down there or they were already there. And
Was there a lot of visual sightings of these objects, or is it just equipment? That's
a lot of
picking them
visual sightings.
up? Was it the same sort of thing, a circle with a square inside of it?
Or solid spheres, some elongated spheres, kind of more tic-tac shape, if you will. And during that workup cycle, that's when we recorded what's now known as the gimbal and go fast video. And they almost had to shut that entire exercise down because there were multiple near misses while we were trying to do this. And this is a big deal. If they cancel that training mission, that means the people that are deployed essentially have to be there longer. They have to wait longer. So there's a lot of downstream effects. So pretty big deal to even consider canceling a training our training mission like this. So again, we filed it up. We didn't know what else to do with it, and we went back to our training, left on deployment. In 2017, a New York Times article came out. I was now an instructor pilot in Mississippi and for the Navy still. And on front page of New York Times, lo and behold, there are the video of the gimbal and the go fast with the pilot's audio on there that we've heard now. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is still going on. Massive deja vu, as you might imagine. And that I saw that as like a cry for help, essentially, that these videos have now been somewhat smuggled out. They're on the front page of New York Times. And
Do we know how the gimbal or the go fast videos got leaked?
my understanding is that work was done partially with Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon. So there was 2 videos that were attached, right? So when you record in the jet, it records 2 screens. It records.
Can we show those, Jamie? Show those videos.
So it records these 2 screens, right? And the bottom screen is like a God's eye view with all your radar data, and the right one is your FLIR system. And when you watch that in the briefing room after, they're stitched together like side by side. And that that's what I saw, and that's how I built my understanding of this situation.
Here it is. So with the crosshairs, is that they're trying to lock in on it? So now they've locked in on it, right?
Yeah, they weren't able to gain a lock in their air-to-air mode, so they actually had to degrade down to an air-to-surface mode, kind of a manual locking mode, and that's that box that you see.
What is the difference? Like,
the air-to-air mode should essentially be looking exactly where the radar is dropping them off and should automatically lock on it. But in the method that you're seeing here, the pilot's manually slewing the sensor. This is kind of like a last-ditch effort to get it. And he's like restarting it, and that's why the box keeps getting bigger, and it's getting smaller. It's not capturing it.
what would be the difficulty? Like, why is it difficult to lock on?
We don't know. One theory is that it's because it's relatively close to the ground, and there's a lot of background, right, to confuse the sensor. But it's
How
really,
far off the ocean is this supposed to be?
it's somewhere around 10,000 feet or so. So it's really not that close. So it's really not a great explanation. But yeah, you can see him try it there.
Now, what do they estimate the size of this thing to be?
What is this?
I don't know if anyone has estimated a size, to be honest. It's hard, from the pilot's perspective, they're not going to be able to make a real-time assessment of the size.
Because how far above this thing are they?
Well, they're about 5 miles away or so.
5 miles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you see the range.
Okay, so
3.4
what we can
right
do,
there. That range is coming strictly.
I can
from
put
the
a
sensor
custom
itself. It's not a very
background, and then we have
reliable
this.
indicator of the range.
Does this
That's
look
what the
cool or
radar is
what?
for. So although it says about 3.5, 4.4, and then ticks down, it's probably a little bit
What does
further
that
away
stand
than
for? RNG.
that range.
So the speed is that on there anywhere of how fast this thing's going?
So you have 170 V sub C right below the
Mhm.
range,
Uh-huh.
and that's indicating our relative velocity.
And that's
Uh,
miles per hour or kilometers? Or
It
is
should
that
be knots, so it's probably
knots?
like 180, 190 miles per hour.
no heat signature.
Well, there is a heat differential anyway. So right now we're in white hot. So objects that are white are hotter objects than the
Right.
background.
I've used infrared binoculars before.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. You can see like raccoons and shit.
So that's showing us that it's cooler than the surrounding.
Oh my god, I
environment.
love this effect.
Which is very bizarre for
Yeah.
something that's moving 170 whatever miles an hour.
Yeah, and it's just to be clear, the 170 doesn't
Okay, I think
represent,
we're
like,
done
raw
for now.
speed.
This looks
This is the video,
amazing.
which is different.
Yep.
And this one, does it show the speed of this?
Okay.
No.
Might do like
This
a
is the
little
one that
background
rotates.
here.
Yes.
And when we're looking at this signature, when we're looking at the does that represent something that's cooler than the outside area, or hotter? Like,
What else
So
can we
this
do?
one's
So we have the
black, so
chat
this
box
is showing
now.
us that it's hotter than the
YouTube
surrounding
chat
area.
is showing.
and would this be similar to what you would see if you saw a jet that was flying?
I
No.
mean, we've seen.
But I
thousands
need
of
kick
aircraft like
chat
that.
also
But
to
I mean, in
show.
terms of the signature that it gives off with the temperature, or would you be able to see a visible means of propulsion that would be accentuated?
Yeah, you would see the exhaust coming out of the
Uh-huh.
back. You'd be able to see the skin of the aircraft itself. So the sensor is not great, but it's good enough where you can break out some pretty good detail on a jet. I mean, it looks like a jet.
Where is YouTube?
Right.
There it
Well, this
is.
definitely doesn't look like a jet. You know, it kind of looks like a flying saucer, and then it turns.
How do we add
sideways,
kick?
Which is really weird. What do
And-
we? Is there anything on that shows the speed?
On the bottom left, you see 242 knots. That's how fast the aircraft that is recording it is going. The pilots do talk about how it's going 120 knots against the wind. And in my
This is good
recollection,
though.
it was going at a relatively slow speed for a fighter aircraft, around 100 knots or so at those speeds, from looking at the radar data itself.
So, as far as you know, we don't have anything that moves like that.
No.
And we don't have anything that gives off a signature like that.
No. No.
And were they able to figure out where this is going, or keep an eye on it, or do we have sensors that can detect this for any length of time?
You would assume that the sensors on the
But he's
ships
talking
themselves,
about
if they were looking there, would be able to detect these objects. But
the
we're not really looking into the people
UFO.
that are doing that on the boat. The pilots essentially took this upon themselves to go investigate this, and they reported to Intel when they came back. And that's where
Oh
it's
man, it's
confusing.
getting fucking
Whether they
late,
whether,
dude.
like, the
I gotta
aircraft
make my
management guys
food.
on the boat themselves then took it upon themselves to go try to detect these objects. I don't have that information. I was never in that information stream, but
Is-
presumably they would.
Is there a capability where so?
I think that's good for now,
fighter jet
guys.
walks in on something like that. Is there
Walked how many hours
source
today?
of some
A
sort
little
of
bit more than
satellite
2
that they can
hours.
team into or tune into, where they can do
2.5
coordinates
hours.
and say, "Hey, this is at this exact coordinate."
We got the layout done
Can you guys lock
a
into that?
little bit more.
No,
That looks
not
quite
within the
good, I
E
jet
feel.
itself. We can
I'm gonna
share the
work a
data
little bit
amongst
more on
jets.
this.
So if you were flying out there,
And then we have to
aircraft
like
that recorded
update
that
all the
video,
socials and stuff.
getting that on the radar, that information would get
And then the
would get
following weeks,
sent
we're
to
gonna
other
build a
jets in the
few
area.
bots.
There was a large training mission going on.
We're gonna
I'm not
build
aware
a
of
few
anyone that,
GPTs.
were paying attention to those contacts that were.
And it's
sent
gonna
to
be
us
all
via
fun
Twitter.
and amazing.
But it shouldn't have been just self-contained into the aircraft
But yeah, guys,
itself. And additionally, that information should have also been received.
we might listen to this next time. Right now, too much information to just listen to. I can't focus on this. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys. Wish you a nice Christmas day if I don't see you. Tomorrow is Tuesday. Might come online tomorrow. Let's see what happens. And on Wednesday, we're gonna attempt the pull workout. Today we had a push workout. It was quite good. I feel good. Shoulder is quite fucked. Feels good. And yeah. Gotta take one step after another, guys. Back to greatness. All right. Merry Christmas, guys. GG, thank you. Bye.